So good evening, everybody. Good evening, Murali sir. So we all have interacted with Murali sir again, so I'll not spend time to introduce him. So in this session, Murali sir, we would request you to just give all of us an overview of what you are covering in both the batches and where do you think these topics might lead the students to, and uh, what was your motivation perhaps to do these topics in this camp? And then I would request parents to follow it up with whatever questions they may have. I will stick to questions related to what sir is covering in the camp. And yeah, okay. So Murli sir, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Vinay. See, actually, this one, normally I have never taught kids of this age except my daughter in the past. I always liked discrete maths. I also specialized in that, but I have written a book also on combinatorics. Discrete maths can be taught to kids who are very young age. In fact, I remember when we were in Singapore, and my daughter was around 10 years old. And at the time when we were walking on the Serangoon Road, I taught her combinatorics, meaning how to count and so on. And then that really stuck on, meaning they could understand the sense that even though usually in a school syllabus, combinatorics is taught only in the 11th standard and that too very briefly. It's a very interesting subject. And then, meaning if you ask me, some of the interesting subjects and some of the subjects which any young kid would be fascinated about, and they are not at all there in the syllabus at all. For instance, number theory is not there, discrete math is not there. Geometry, of course, it used to be there in a big way. Nowadays, geometry has been given a go by. And these are the ones which really kids are really interested in. In fact, if you, I have done this experiment several times. One is that you ask a very intelligent student which subjects you like, they always answer geometry and combinatorics. And if you ask a not so good student which subjects you really feel difficult about, they also say geometry and combinatorics. So it's actually the difference between a good student and a not so good student is the kind of thing which differentiates, because this geometry and combinatorics number theory, no two problems are alike, meaning every problem has to be thought about. In fact, mathematics is about thinking only. So, in fact, at a very young age, it will be very beneficial for the students to get an exposure to combinatorics, in fact, graph theory and other things. But that will be really a good introduction to serious mathematics. So, what I thought is that let me introduce the topics in a more elaborate fashion instead of going into big theory and all those things. Let us take some everyday examples. Like, for instance, if I can share my screen briefly. One second. One, four. Where is this one? 1 minute, I can just. Okay. I will share first. And then. See, if you look at this football, meaning which is made up of hexagons and pentagons, and we can count the number of pentagons as 12. Okay, and many times for many of us, the initial thing, if I tell you that to make, even if you make a very large football, you should have always 12 pentagons only. It's actually related to a deep theorem in topology. So even though the counting and all those, it's called the Euler characteristic, and this Euler characteristic can be introduced in a very elementary fashion. Okay, or if you look at the golf ball, this is made up of plenty of hexagons, and then but here also you will see pentagons here, and this also will contain only 12 pentagons, and those 10 pentagons will be in a very uniformly placed like this. They will be placed uniformly like this one. So these are the things which probably I think I thought that it will fascinate students because it is something which they can touch and feel. And at the same time, the math is not very hard. I mean, it basically requires a bit of counting experience and all those things. That's one part of this one. And if you really go ahead, and then we also thought that we will introduce some games like this. This is actually called the instant insanity. See, unfortunately nowadays we don't find very mathematical toys in the market. I mean, it used to be lot many of them, and nowadays I don't find this toy at all in the market. But I got one about a year back here, and then in a toy shop. This actually is a set of four cubes which you have to arrange in a tower, so that each face will have all the four colors in them. Like for instance, this way. Okay, and this contains very deep mathematics in the sense that so how to, meaning if you really look at the number of combinations which you can arrange these four cubes, they're close to about 41,782 combinations are there. So you cannot do it by trial and error, but there's a math way of doing it. In fact, there are more than one way of doing this, and we are going to introduce two ways of doing this one. And both the ways are within the reach of students. It doesn't need any prerequisites. It just requires uh, some multiplication and division of normal numbers only, nothing else. And of course, it requires some graph theory. That also we have introduced from the basics. So this is one thing. And then the other toy, which all of you would have known, like for instance, this is what is called the brain beta. And then this brain beta also, we have 33 holes and 32 marbles. The aim is to leave a hole in the center and then end with one marble at the center. The question is, which other places we can leave a marble with? Can I leave a marble at this place or this place and so on? And that question requires a bit of mathematics. And then we are going to see that there are only 5 positions in the whole of this where we can leave a marble with. Okay, that is one story. And the other one is that suppose I have mm, this kind of this also is sort of a triangular solitaire. So there we had this one pattern. Here is another pattern. There is this. There are 15 holes here, and then we start with a blank hole here. And same rules apply. We just jump over a blank hole and then meaning jump over a hole to a blank hole and remove the thing which is in between and so on. So again, in this case, the same question: Can you, which other positions can you leave the final marble with? Here you can show that there are only 4 positions, and that is a very difficult mathematics. That also we are going to introduce the students to. So the main aim of all these things is to give the impression to the students that math is not hard. It is something related to everyday life, and also it is if you really pursue it in a particular way, you will find it interesting and exciting as well. Okay, and then the whole of thing is towards problem solving. Meaning, how do you solve a problem? So you just have some conditions. Like first, I showed you the peg solitaire. And I have a condition, and then I am supposed to find out which other positions I can leave the marble with, and you have to see a pattern in all those things, and you have to find a criteria. You have to find an invariant, and which doesn't change at all as you move the marbles and so on, and find where that invariant can lie at the end of the story. So there are plenty of mathematics like this, which are normally which go by the name recreational mathematics, and many of them contain very deep level of thinking, like even some of the group theory and so on. There is another puzzle which is also very interesting, which I think we will discuss that as well. I will show you that as well. So this one. So this is the 15 puzzle. This is also called a sliding puzzle and then boss puzzle and so on. So here there is a set of 16 tiles and one of them is vacant. And then you just slide the tiles and then bring them to the position, meaning normal position. Here what we have done is that 1, 2, 3, 4, everything is the same thing, except that we have changed 15 and 14 like this. Okay. And if you try to bring this to the normal position, that is 13, 14, 15, you'll always fail. Now, the fact that this cannot be done is a very well-known fact, but it requires quite a bit of mathematics to prove that it can't be done. And not only that, if for which of the other combinations of the positions this could be brought to the natural order is also a very nice question, and then we will answer that question also. And the nice part in all these things is that these do not require much sophisticated. Okay, let me put it this way: they are all elementary but hard. Okay, there are the problems sometimes can be not elementary and easy, but these problems are elementary but hard. Okay, so we have chosen only problems which are elementary but very hard to think about, and then it will teach them something about good mathematics, and then that's where the choice of topics came about. So all these topics, I believe, are interesting to the students, and I find that some of the students in the class, they go beyond what I expected. Also, meaning some of them discovered patterns which I didn't think in the beginning that they would do that. In fact, some of the students really came up with a sort of, I would say, discovered something called Newton's interpolation formula, which was very nice, and I was really happy to hear about that. And of course, they didn't know why that happens, but they think that why not do this? Of course, the proof is very hard for doing that one, but they didn't know the proof, but they just tried it out. So that's the kind of mathematical thinking any mathematician does. That is, if you are given a problem, and then probably I think they would first of all think that I know about five methods in which this could be attacked, but there is one more sixth method which is never done before, so why not like that? So that's the kind of thinking we have. And the other habit which students have to get into is that it is okay to get frustrated. That is, in the exercise also, we have purposefully given some problems which are slightly beyond their reach, which I know for sure that they may not be able to do, but that is part of life. That is part of life in mathematics. In mathematics, is that you may not be able to solve the problem at all, but you have to keep the problem at the back of your mind. And as you work, as you do some other work and so on, and then sometimes the subconscious mind comes up with a good idea. In fact, I have got most of the ideas when I work.
Sorry, sir. Sorry, I by mistake I have put you on mute. Can you just unmute yourself?
Yeah. So sometimes in fact, I have waited for the solution for close about 3 to 4 months, and then suddenly one day when I was not even thinking about that, an idea comes and then it works. So that is the process of discovery, and then discovery these people should get used to. That is, number one is that it is okay to not solve a problem. Two, it is okay to not solve a problem for more than about 2 to 3 months. And it is okay to get frustrated about solving a problem also. That's also is fine. So all these things are part of the training any mathematician goes through. Okay, and it is good that your children are getting that practice at a very young age. So they will definitely know that what is mathematics about and what the life in mathematics is, and also how to handle that with what should I say, with an expertise of a mathematician. So that is why we have chosen these topics. And then the main thing was that there is no big theory behind any of these. Of course, there are some big theorems behind this one, but those big theorems, fortunately, could be sort of watered down to this level and then taught in a way which they can appreciate. If you ask me, will they be able to come up with a proof like this? Perhaps not. But even knowing that there is a proof of this type is very good for them. In fact, when we really see, if you really look at the language which we learn in early life, we are asked to read lots of articles written by others. That's how you just practice how to write, right? Similarly, here also, if you just look at proofs which are of really beautiful proofs, which are written by somebody else, and then you will know that how to write a proof. So that is part of the training of a mathematician. So you have to read good authors, and you have to see good problems, and you have to see good proofs. So then you will appreciate that how to come up with similar proofs by yourself. Okay, so that is the basic aim of this course. And my only thing is that students are responding very well, and of course you have to tell me whether what they tell you. Of course, I see a lot of excited voices and then in the class, but I don't know what they tell you in private. So they may say that this is beyond me, or this is really difficult. It is difficult means it is good, meaning at least they know that it is difficult, but it's never supposed to be easy in any case. So if it is easy, there is no point, right? There is no point in coming to raising a mathematician foundation or this kind of course. So if it is difficult and working through the difficulty, they learn mathematics. So that is the basic idea.
Thank you so much, Murli sir. I think you have covered what had to be said in 30 minutes, thanks to your speed. The forum is open to the parents. If you have questions, you can just raise hand as always, and you can take turns. Okay, until others ask, let me start.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, please.
Actually, I was having some connection issues. I don't know if I'm going to be asking a question that has already been spoken about. So forgive me in advance for it. I just have a question that for my child and in general, they may have very good ideas on how to solve a problem, or how they can visualize it, or they see a problem and think, oh, I think I know how to do this. When they actually start doing it, a lot of the writing gets a little confusing. There may be gaps in between, or the third thing is that they may be writing too much of English, meaning it is not a mathematical proof. So how does one develop the right way of writing proofs for children of this age? What would be good guidance to, how do you coach them to do that? I don't know if this has been spoken about, so sorry if it has.
Actually, proofwriting is a skill which one has to develop as we go along, and it's okay if they write too much English and all this. That's fine, because that's how they think, and thinking in terms of symbols and thinking in terms of mathematical notation and all those things comes at a later age as they know more and more maths and so on. So because it's about abstraction, I don't know whether at this age they would be okay to assimilate abstraction and then concepts like writing an abstract proof and so on. But it is okay if they are writing too much English, and then as long as they can convince somebody who knows mathematics why their
Correct.
argument is true, then it is still fine. And then they will get to know, they will get to read, okay, how many proofs they would have read so far? Hardly about 10 or 15. And that too, they're all sort of curated, and then they're all well laid out proofs. But maths doesn't happen that way.
Right.
So for a mathematician, the first proof which comes is all haphazard, and then jumping here and there, and then thinking of too many ideas, and then bringing irrelevant ones and all those things. After writing that proof that the theorem is true, at that point, then they think back and say that yes, this can be done in a much neater fashion. And sometimes
Right.
what happens is that this can be done in one line proof. That also is fine. So that also,
Right.
so that way, if they are writing too much English, good. The only thing is that they should be able to stand by that and then know that what they have said is correct or not. And again, having gaps in proofs is fine. Okay, that happens to everybody. That happens to, of course, I don't know whether you know uh, Andrew Wiles, who solved the famous problem, Fermat's last theorem, after 10 years of work.
I'm very non-math, so but yes, heard.
Yeah, 10 years. So in fact, there is one theorem which was stated about 300 years ago and which nobody solved. And then Andrew Wiles, mathematician in the UK, he was working on
Right.
it for about close to 7 years, and then said that he came up with a proof, and then called all the mathematicians and then announced his proof. And of course, the lectures went on for about a month because the proof is pretty long. And at the end of it, somebody found a gap. Okay, and then he went back to the drawing board again and worked for another 3 years and then completed the gap. Of course, now it is
Oh,
called Fermat-Wiles theorem, but that kind of thing really happens at very high level. In fact, many times you think that you have a very watertight argument, but sometimes a simple question by somebody else tells you that you have missed this one particular case. So in math, these things are extremely common. In fact, there's somebody who would have proved and published a proof and all those things. After about 30, 40 years, somebody said, some mathematician says that this proof is as a gap. All those things happen in math. Okay, at the lower level also it happens. It is good. Only thing is that many times we may not be able to point out the gap ourselves. Somebody else will be able to point out. That's why when you write a proof, you should be able to explain that to somebody else. When you do that, then you know that you have a watertight proof, meaning you have a very perfect proof. But all the time, in fact, more than one proof is always the beautiful part of mathematics. Even in this course, I have for many of the things I have given more than one proof. In fact, for one problem which we discussed in the class, there are about 8 different proofs. Okay, but we discussed 4 of them or 3 of them. So it depends. It just shows the different perspectives. It is not that there is only one way of doing things. There are plenty of ways of doing things, and then the student should always look for a newer way of doing things. So meaning looking at a different perspective and all those things. The math is only about looking at things in a different fashion, meaning different perspective, different ideas, and then coming up with arguments which are beautiful in the first thing. Okay, so in fact, Hardy once said that there is no place in this world for ugly mathematics. Okay, it has to be beautiful. Okay, so unless it is beautiful, it is not maths at all.
Right. Sir, just a hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a small, little bit of a question in this is that now when it comes to something like an RMO or an INMO,
Mhm.
uh, in that also, is it okay if it is a lot of English as long as one is able to explain, or that kind of deters away from the explanation of the problem?
Yeah, it is okay. In fact, we know that these students are very young, and we know that they would not have been exposed to a formal proofwriting course and so on. They write
Okay.
lots of English, and in fact, this happens in many of the combinatorics problems. They write about 4 to 5 pages, and then going round and round in circles. Okay, but we still go through all of that. In fact, even in RMO and INMO, 3 professors look at the answer sheet, meaning so that we don't miss anything and so on. So that way, we are patient and we know how to read through these things. But lots of students also bluff, meaning some of them bluff also by some vague theorem. This follows and all those things when it doesn't follow at all. So that also we had to be very careful about. But
Okay.
many students write a lot of English. That is fine. It happens. It doesn't happen in geometry though, because geometry it's all pretty easy, meaning pretty either you have it or you don't have it. But only in combinatorics there are some of the other subjects which they will keep on writing because it's about counting. Okay, in counting we can keep on writing and then without really counting what is really to be counted and so on. So that's fine. So as time progresses, they will know how to write good proofs. But as they learn more mathematics, they will also know how to write good proofs. They will see good proofs, and then they will imbibe that style in their own writing.
Okay. That answers it. Thank you so much, sir.
In fact, I can tell you that in my first paper after joining as a research student, okay, and then I wrote 17 drafts of the first paper because
Oh,
to get that to a level of what should I say, fit for a journal. Okay, so
right,
it
right.
happens. Meaning it definitely happens to everybody, and then we all learn going from one to the other.
Okay. Yes, that was very helpful, sir. Thank you so much.
Murli sir, 17 is very less a number, right, to get into a journal.
No, 17 drafts of the paper.
Yes, yes, but still people have to do so many more with revisions and
Yeah,
feedback.
yeah, that is right. But thanks to that, of course, my guide was very well-known world-class mathematician. And then once he approved it, the journal had hardly any comments, meaning they just passed it just like that. So, because he has written so many papers, he knows what flies and what doesn't.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
At least your children ask more questions in the class.
Pressure on parents now.
No, it's quite very. So what do they tell you? Meaning, are they enjoying these things and are they okay with this?
Yeah, I think my child is enjoying it quite a bit. There are sometimes when he is probably. Uh, I hope you're able to hear me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. No, there are times sometimes when he's a little unsure of something or he has not learned a particular concept. Then he says, "Oh, I don't know this concept." So sometimes it is something may be a little hard to follow. And then he gets excited if he knows something that is being discussed already or he has an idea of it. So overall, he's thoroughly enjoying himself. I think the problem set, uh, probably your problem set, there were a couple of problems that were tough that he really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a very good experience for him.
Mm. Yeah, if we can see, if we can do all the problems in a problem set, no, that's a poor problem set. Okay. That didn't test you at all. But see, what is it? See, in fact, today I discussed the solutions to all the problems, and where we emphasize that how all the problems could be done using just the theory which we taught in the first 15 minutes of the session one. That's all was required, nothing else.
Oh,
Okay, only thing is it's
oh,
about thinking correctly and then fitting the correct thing. See, it is not, see, the problem with many of the students is that whenever they see an unknown problem, okay, they try to
yes.
think whether I have seen a similar problem before. That's a bad idea. So what they have to think is that what is the concept which I have to use. So the search has to be for a concept and not the search has to be for a problem. So if you look at many of these examination or exam-oriented training, it always is
Mm,
that if this is the problem, this is the technique. So it's like a mapping of problem to a technique. That doesn't help at all because in many of these things we know how to twist it, and then once the twist is set, and only really the best can unravel that twist and then come to the correct concept. And of course, we also put some hurdles in between, and all those hurdles have to be crossed so that they will know how to
right,
okay, that will strengthen their concepts as they go along. See, actually, it is. We can even say that it is problem solving through problems, meaning how to learn problem solving through the problem.
right,
So that's how we have designed it.
right. Sir, just one more question from my end. I hope I'm not taking other people's time. Just one question from my end is that many times I hear that visualizing something is very good. It's like when we draw mind maps for, when we are learning, we do small mind maps or flow charts and becomes easier. Same way, visualizing in mathematics is good because it helps you see how to solve a problem. Is there some techniques or something how this can be encouraged, inculcated, developed, or grown?
See, actually, okay, let me see. What do you mean by visualization? See, that is actually a generic word which means several things to several people.
Um, vi-
Uh,
Visualization meaning now, when in maths it's a little bit abstract, right?
yeah.
Uh, so how do you get a 3D visualization of a problem?
No, no, actually visualization, that's what I said. Visualizations are, if you know algebra, you will visualize using symbols.
Right,
And if you know geometry, you will visualize using figures and pictures and all those things. And everybody has their own style of visualization, depending on how good they are in visualization. So that way, see, in fact, if it is a problem and then if it is an algebraist, he or she will always look at it as a symbol, and then it is extremely natural for them. It's almost like looking at a picture. But to somebody else, it will be very abstract, and then it's all nonsense. What is the meaning? What do you make up of all these things? So if you really look at
correct,
some of the board full of symbols, and
right,
for some it is a beautiful poetry. They visualize the poetry like that, but for some of them it is all gibberish, right? So that way it depends
right,
on what you do, and this visualization technique comes as you solve more and more problems, and as you just accumulate more and more tools in your repertoire. That's what it's all about. So the
oh,
more practice you have, then the more visualization comes in. So
right, okay, okay, I get it.
actually, to tell you, this Euler, who was one of the greatest mathematicians, and he was blind for the last 17 years of his life. Even then, he produced so many papers, and the whole thing was done in his mind. In fact, I told this story in the class, and somebody asked, "How can you do maths without seeing?" In fact, the maths is not about seeing; it's maths is about seeing in the brain, in the mind. So, how you construct the problem and how do you solve the problem? In fact, most of the math problems are solved in the mind, not on paper.
Right.
So that way, the more expert you are, the more visualization skills we have, then the more meaning good you are, meaning at problem solving. And if you really look at some two mathematicians working, they'll be sitting in a coffee table and looking at each other intently. Meaning it is nothing to do about they are seeing each other. They are seeing something else, and then their mind is elsewhere. And then suddenly they'll say, "Okay, that I know," and I don't know what they know. Right? You cannot at all. The thing is, that's all visualization. That's all that they are seeing it in the mind, as if it's a movie going on inside.
Correct.
Okay, so and again, see, I have seen lots of meaning, lots of people walking on me. I was in TAFR, and there's a seashore just next by. Then we used to walk there, and then somebody, two people will be walking there, and then discussing something. Suddenly, they will stop talking, and then they just stop talking, and then after 5 minutes, they'll just stand still, and after okay, now I get it. That's it. So what do they do in between those 5 minutes? They're visualizing, right? They are in a
Yes.
different world altogether. So that skill comes when you go more deeper and deeper into mathematics.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
If I can just add one small anecdote in continuation to this, Murali sir. In one of the sessions where a few of these epsilon kids were there, and suddenly they went off to something like counting the number of edges, faces, and vertices, in 4 dimension, 5 dimension, and all that, and they started discussing about things which I had no idea about, and somebody was saying, oh yes, I can also see this, I can also see this, and there were some of us sitting in the class who were like, okay, I have no idea what you're talking about, and where do you see this? So for me, maybe visualization is something like what Savita Vijay was saying. I try to think of it in the form of a 3D thing, but the moment we bring an image, you cannot go beyond 3 dimension, right? I mean, if the 4 dimension we cannot enter into, so
Yes.
we get stuck over there. But then the some of these kids, they imagine in very different ways, which of course would be hard for them to explain how they see that in their head. uh, and one of them actually, I'm sorry, I'm just tempted to speak here, which is, so one of them actually told me, how do you understand 4 dimensions? So he was like, okay, you take a point, it has 0 dimension, you do it like this, you make 2 points out of it, you have 1 dimension, you make 4 points out of it, you have 2 dimensions, you stretch it up, you have 3 dimensions, and then you do this, you have 4 dimensions. I said, what is this? Then you do this. So he was able to see that thing, but I never understood what that
Yes.
really means. So it's really,
Which
yeah.
is why I was curious whether there are any techniques that ordinary people like us can do to build upon this skill.
Right. Now, ordinary people meaning, see, everybody can enjoy mathematics, okay? And of course, you may not be able to produce mathematics, you can enjoy mathematics. And some basic training is really required. So that's what, see, if you ask a music expert, so how do you recognize a raga, right? And for that person, it will be very natural. For us, it will be meaning I don't know, I know next to nothing about music, so I won't be able to do that. So how do I do that? I develop that skill. So similarly, if you really want to develop this, and you have to come to mathematics, meaning you have to learn some mathematics, and you have to see that one. That's the only thing which I can say, because this is a specific expertise which one has to get trained in. So that's the kind of thing, right?
Okay. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Somebody had raised hand in between.
I'm Gayatri.
Okay.
So my son has been getting very inspired by your session. And after you introduced this Platonic and Archimedes solids and also introduced a simulation tool, he's been creating some solids whose names are like too long for me to pronounce. And he's been trying to explore it for hours together, actually.
Okay. Okay. Good.
So you are making it very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Doshi.
Yeah, I just wanted to add here, after listening to Sir explain today in terms of what his sessions cover, my son, whose name is Manas, whenever we have, generally checked how does he find it, he is excited after your session, especially. But then we had failed to understand one thing, that his homework for Sir was not complete, and which we failed to know why. But he's of a type that he wants to always complete the entire homework before submitting. So the reason for not submitting has been that possibly, now when I hear you, I think that there might be certain things on which he needs to think more or give more time. So he hasn't submitted that. So after your session right now, I could figure out why that is that way.
Yeah, that's in the beginning I told that it's not expected to answer all the problems, and then see, it's not about scoring 100. Okay, meaning whenever somebody, a batsman, even Dhoni, goes to play, his aim is to enjoy the play, not that he has to hit sixes and all those things. Of course, sorry for this IPL type of format, which has really killed the game for everybody. The thing is, see, a player has to enjoy. So unless you enjoy the math, enjoy what you do, and there is no point in doing that at all. So it's okay to get. That's why I said that it's okay to not to solve a problem. It's okay not to get even a remotest idea as to how to solve a problem. All that are fine. Meaning those things will improve as we go along. Only thing is we need patience, and we have to really keep our enthusiasm alive. That's all. And that's why I always say, all the students, getting frustrated is a necessity to learn mathematics, or to even to learn any subject for that matter. And think about how much frustrated people would have become when they tried to play perfect cricket, and how much training they undergo, and then how much, for instance, some of the gymnasts, or even these exercises and all those things, they really are so perfect. And then you can't think how many hours they would have practiced to get that perfection. Okay, so that's the kind of spirit we should approach math also. And of course, it is not a grueling training like that. It is basically an enjoyable training, meaning if you really get a good mentor and a good teacher. So that's what it is. I'm not talking about school math, where you have to complete exercise 1, 2, 3 and before tomorrow, and which is all this 1, 2, 3 is that exercise 1 is doing the same thing 100 times, and exercise 2 is doing another thing 200 times, and so on. So that's not what I'm talking about. So if you do one problem, and it should teach you something really which you do not know yet, then it's a good problem. Okay. If you already know something and then you just have to plug and play, and then how many times you plug and play, and it hardly gives you any skill at all. It is basically opening and closing the door 100 times. What does it teach you? Nothing. Correct. So it's a similar thing. So we have to have a problem which should make you think, which you make you frustrated, which you make you solve the problem one way or the other. So that's the kind of.
Agree. Thank you so much. Because the way we understand, children also love to have the challenges in whatever they are doing. And when they find it that there are problems which are very easy, they just lose their focus. So once it's not, then that's when I think they really want to give it some time. And what you said, being a perfectionist. So yes, that's one thing also what he possesses. So unless he sometimes thinks that I need to submit all of this together, so I have not done my bit, and then that's where he does not want to go ahead. So yeah, that's. Thank you so much.
I completely agree with Gauriji, and this time as a parent, even with my son, the first 2-3 days he was like, no, I need to write. There is only one more problem that is remaining, and I need to come up with the proof for this one. And it was 10 o'clock at night. I said, proofs don't come so easily if you are very new to it. So it's okay if you submit it without one problem done. But then I think most of these kids are so used to completing the entire thing and submission before the deadline, and they have some kind of self-image which they want to protect in terms of teachers sometimes. So all these things come into the dynamics, and it takes them a little time to realize is that it's okay. You you may be just not able to do a problem sometimes, and you need to submit something else. So yeah, I just wanted to echo that. You know.
Yeah, well, that's a good point Vinay made. See, sometime in their life they have to get exposed to the fact of life that some problems are beyond them. Okay, it's not that a question paper being so far being all brilliant kids, they would have been 100 out of 100 all the time, and there will be a time in their life, meaning sometime, okay, when they will be told of the fact that failure is an option even for best. Okay, so they will get into that one, and then at that point you should not hit them hard. That's why we have to train. We have to just coach them in the sense that all these things are fine. These are like sometimes things, life is hard. Sometimes problems are hard. Sometimes it's okay, and you may not be able. For instance, in the case of RMO, if you are training for RMO, we should be prepared for the fact that you may not be able to do even one problem. That is a fact of life. Okay, and I know a lot of kids okay, who come up to INMO, and then in INMO it's like a ton of bricks on their head, because they can't even see the first problem is supposed to be very easy, meaning very easy in some sense, but they couldn't even complete first problem. Then that means that they just lose morale, but that's not the thing, right? The thing is that they are not thinking in the right fashion. So it all happens. So next year anyway. So in RMO, if at all into competitive maths, particularly for international Olympiads and then uh, even Olympiads like regional Olympiads, we should be prepared that sometimes we may not score high. Okay. And again, I hear that, of course, this IIT JEE is also is a low scoring. It used to be a low scoring exam before, but nowadays that also has been perfected that using all these coaching institutes into a drudgery, really. Okay. So, anyway, so that's a different story. So they are okay, meaning you have to train, you have to tell them that it's okay not to solve a problem. So that's part of life.
So there is one question that came to me on the chat, that is, how can the parents support the child when they get stuck with a problem and get frustrated? In the sense, what could be an ideal thing to do when the child is really frustrated and stuck on a problem? And I think that's a very that's a very valid question, because all of us take I think we try to take measures which we feel is the right thing to do, and which may not be. So I think that's a very valid question.
See, actually, this you have to understand the process of solving a problem. It is never linear. Okay, it is not that you start at meaning first sentence and finish at the end sentence and complete it. It doesn't happen at all. It's all, see, it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. So you will get frustrated, and then the first thing to do when you get frustrated is leave the problem for the time being. Just relax, do something else, and come back after some time. Come back the next day. So that way you bring into a fresh idea, and then that might work. Okay. So it's if you just try harder and harder, your mind doesn't help you to solve the problem. So the mind needs rest. The mind needs the subconscious mind to work on that problem to get an idea. So that is where, as I said, no, I have, in fact, I have been. When I joined TCS way back, there was one problem, one technical problem which we are working on for more than about a month. Nobody could solve that one. And then at that time, I used to live in some place, and where I have to get on from a train and then walk about a kilometer to a house. And then in between, there's a market, or vegetable market also. So I had to buy vegetables and then go home. And I wasn't thinking about the problem at all. Then I was buying vegetables as usual. Suddenly, an idea came at that point, and that idea worked. And after 1 month of hot oil, when I was not thinking of the problem, when I was doing something else totally unrelated, the problem got solved. Okay, so that kind of experience is the aha moment, which is really very cherishable. Even today, this is close to about how many years? 11 plus 32 years. I remember the place and then the face of the vegetable vendor. So because that aha moment are so cherishable, and then everybody loves those aha moments. So this kind of, see, when somebody is frustrated, leave that problem, come back after some time, suddenly there will be an aha moment will work, and that aha moment is the most beautiful, cherishable moment of their discovery. Okay, so that's like the light bulb, meaning glowing in your mind, and then all those things. So that is important. So that is actually why we are all here in this game. All those aha moments, which are really beautiful moments. So that's the moment of discovery. That's the moment of where you excel yourself. That's what is required. Just if your child is stuck with a problem, ask them to leave that at the time being and then come back to it later. That will be the best advice I could think of, which worked to me anyway. So that's what I do.
There is one question. What age do kids start preparing for the RMO or INMO?
What? No, no, say that again.
What age do kids start preparing for RMO or INMO?
No, there are, it depends, meaning it's not, the RMO is not about prepare. Okay, I beg to differ in that, meaning, see, you have to blossom into that. It's not that you can prepare for a race or you can prepare for a match or you can prepare for an exam. RMO is not like, not an exam. You are trying to discover your thinking skills. So thinking skills have to be developed, and then, meaning the more you see problems at early age, then you become more and more adept at that. So it's like a flower naturally blossoming into fruition. That's what it is about. And you have to love math, and then you have to keep on learning math as you go along. And of course, you can use the previous year's RMO questions and all those things to see where it stands and so on. There's a base syllabus in any case, which you have to know. And nowadays, there are plenty of resources on the internet for learning more and more deeper math and so on. And there are plenty of books as well. And there are some of the books are really outstandingly written, like Yog Bloom and others. So if you can get those things and then read, or if you can work with some formal teachers like Vinay or others, then that helps because they can do it that way. But never have that as a goal post. Okay, the goal post has to be to learn more math. So as you learn more and more math, you will definitely accumulate more and more skills to solve problems. And then as you accumulate more and more skills to solve problems, all this will come naturally. Okay, so it is like when you know how to sing very well, and you really enjoy that singing. So if you really look at, for instance, many of those expert singers, they close their eyes when they sing. Right. Similarly, if you close your eyes when you think about a problem in math, and then that time you would have become a mathematician. So if you have really started loving math, all this RFO, everything is trivial. Meaning they all come naturally to you. There is no this one at all. And some of the ideas these kids come up with in INMO are outstanding, really. Meaning I don't know how they could think about such things, but they really do very, very well that way. So there are people like that. And of course, your child also can go to that level, provided he takes it to the right spirit and then put math, and then learning skills as the primary focus rather than getting into RMO and getting into IMO. So that will be a byproduct of this rather than that's the only goal post. The goal has to be different. The goal is to learn math.
I mean, I wish I could give an award for what you just said. these are golden words. These are golden words. Okay, so one question: how to guide or encourage children to solve the same problem in a different way?
That I think needs a different perspective for the problem, and then that won't come immediately. Meaning, if you have, once you have solved the problem, no, the mind has fixed in the group, so you won't be able to do that again at that point in time. So you can come back to the problem later. Okay. So, for instance, when long back when I used to teach one particular problem which was really beautiful. The first year I came up with six solutions. Next year I came up with another 12 solutions. So, but there is a gap between these two things. So the gap is required to think about this problem in a different way. So even in the epsilon class, when I give two proofs, meaning two different proofs, both the proofs have been arrived at in a different fashion, meaning they would have been different at different points in time also. So it's not that you sit down and then I will come up with three proofs for this one. No, it doesn't happen that way. Okay, we come up with a proof first, and then leave that problem. And then when you're thinking about something else, why not apply this also to previous problem? That kind of stuff. So you can't do it in a linear way. It will be sort of a haphazard, like a maze. So you will go through a maze, and then suddenly you will remember that something else happens here, and something else clicks, and so on. So that's how it is.
Um, yes. So okay. So I had a question, but I'll go after if anybody else has a question. All right. So I take the silence as permission to me. Yes, yes.
Sir,
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, please.
yes, sorry. This is not more a question. It is mainly what I find is that when a child or a person is sitting doing something alone, uh, it can get a little frustrating. It can get a little lonely, and then when you are stuck, you don't know what to do. So I find collaboration is much better than working out anything alone, or it's a better way to develop yourself also or blossom as a mathematician or any field. So in India now you started Ganit Manthan. That was fantastic. Shresth has really loved, especially the offline sessions. And I so hate COVID for doing what it has done and messed up with not being able to meet in person and interact in person. But like I said, this is not a question. What I'm hopeful of is, would there be mathematical circles at local, regional, city levels for by professors like you, Muralidharan sir, to help children blossom naturally and not just prepare competitions? Could we look forward to that? That is a request more than a question.
Maybe we take the request and we'll come back when there is something concrete that can be done. And
Yeah.
Savita ji has been on the tail of math circle since last at least 2 years. I know that for myself. That's from my side. Murli sir, you have anything to?
Yeah, in fact, see this frustration for the gifted kids is very real. In fact, if you ask me, the talented kids who are getting a rough treatment in the current education system, so they are left out, and then they are frustrated, and then they have nobody else to go and all those things. But math circles is a good idea. In fact, Russia and then some of the European countries, it's been done very well. But the top great mathematicians like Krotowski and others used to come and lecture to the school kids, 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids on Saturdays, and then they used to really train those students in a particular way. So that way, the students got their real guidance from those kind of people. So here, I don't know how practical it will work, because it depends, because math circles cannot be more than about 10, 15 students at a time. And I don't know how much resources we could spend on this. And again, it takes a lot of time to prepare. In fact, if I have to lecture for 1 hour, and I had to prepare at least for 3 hours. So that way, it really takes a lot of time on the faculty as well, because these are all good kids, and then we have to really sort of sort of plan the session in a very meticulous fashion. So that takes a lot of time. So mass circles is good, and then it will be a welcome move, but I'm not sure how far it could be made widespread. For a few students, yes, but if you want 1,000 students to be trained that way, probably that's not practical.
Sorry, sir. I think there was one more question along with that. Is collaboration versus working alone on problems? So
yeah, collaboration with the right group of students will be good. And actually, the real difference will come from a mentor, meaning either offline or online mentor, or once a week, even for about an half an hour meeting and things like that. That will make the biggest difference. And collaboration is that the other student also has to be at the same level, in same interest and all this. then it will be really nice. Collaboration is very good.
Sorry. I think I'm on mute. Sorry. Uh, yeah. What I was saying is, when my son was in school, currently he's homeschooling now, but when he was in school, he in fact withdrew more and more because he just didn't find the right people to discuss things with. And if he would sit in the school bus and talk to somebody about such things, they would stare at him and they would say, we are not able to understand what you are saying. He would try to explain very hard to them, and then he would get frustrated and come home and say, I don't have any friend. And which is why I was so grateful for Ganit Manthan. And uh, we were despairing what to do, how to make him blossom, how to encourage him. Because we are very ordinary regular thinkers, we are not very I you know we don't have that kind of math skills, so we would struggle a lot. And meeting Vinay sir was life changing for my son Shresh. And I really feel that a lot more needs to be done in this area, where such children are probably scattered. Like if you talk about one city also, say Bombay, or even few suburbs, put together in Bombay, you have so many suburbs. I'm sure my son is not the only one. There will be many children like this. It's just that either they're suffering in silence or they're told to study in the school framework. So, these things, this interest, this love falls by the side. And then what happens is, actually, as you grow older and older, dumbing down happens. You're bright when you start, when you're small, when you're younger, but with the competition and that whole thing of, you're bright, so then you have to top in the school, and which is why we pulled him out, because he was topping. We didn't want that, and he didn't want it either. We wanted him to enjoy, and we decided to take the risk and see what happens. But this thing then actually kills that spirit of seeking or searching. And which is why collaboration of people, children meeting other children like this frequently, uh, to help them realize that they're not alone in this journey. In India, I find, because I think Vinay sir had also exposed us. He had been to Germany, or he had written a paper, and there were a lot of mathematical circles there, as you yourself said, in Russia, in the US, every, even small cities, small suburbs, they all have. But we lack this so much, and I think the kids do suffer from a deficit of collaboration, which
So
could
if
help them.
Savita ji, yes. I mean, if I can just add, so in most of the places in other countries, I think they are funded by the government, or there is a university who is supporting all these initiatives, and there are not one or two, but there is a lot of mathematicians, faculty members who support that particular initiative. So
Right.
it's backed by a big organizational structure, who can bring in all these people at a regular time. So and unfortunately, I think in India, most mathematicians would be preferring to work with college students than school students. So I think that's also a challenge. But yeah, I take your question, and
Yeah, I
hopefully
don't know
we'll
how
have.
to frame it, whether question or plea or request, or
Uh,
I don't know. I just feel that we need this so much. I understand it's a huge ask, but it's
yeah,
just that if that something can be done, I think we have wonderful students. I need not tell you, you know it so well. You have been in this field for over a decade, and you know what gems are there.
I understand. I understand. I
We're
completely agree.
suffering. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So one thing on the collaboration is that if you really look at the AOPS website, I mean, they have a community forum and where the kids discuss among themselves about problem solutions and then how they did and all those things. And then that kind of thing can happen here also. I mean, it will be India specific and all those things. So that way, if you really go to AOPS forum, you'll see that there are lots of kids, of course, they're all in pseudonames and so on. Then they will discuss everything in terms of how they did and why they failed in AIME, meaning what problem they found it difficult and all those things. Very, very healthy discussion. So
Correct.
that kind of common online forums may help, and that meaning as a via media solution for collaboration, physical
Right.
or 4x4 and so on. And again, similar collaboration forums can be created among students and the faculty. But actually, the problem is pretty huge, and then it's like boiling the ocean. So difficult to start, and then because of the lack of, as Vinay sir pointed out, the lack of faculty, lack of people interested in this, that the students are, we have to work with children if we really want to produce good mathematicians, late
Correct.
game and so on. But as he said, no, there's most of the mathematicians who would like to work with college children and then blame that we don't get good students. Okay, so if you want really good students, we really have to start at the school level. And then
Right. There
that's
is,
where the damage is done. And that's where people are
yes.
driven to engineering and then other
Yes.
mundane fields.
Yes. So there is no option. Like if you look in the Western countries, you have accelerated learning. If a child is gifted in, say, one particular subject, he or she will be put in a higher grade, will be allowed to take accelerated learning. We don't have such concepts even in the top tier cities of India. So where does the child go if there is no Vinay Nair or somebody like him?
No, yeah, that's actually, see, in India, this kind of thing will be very difficult because these are all elitist concepts, and then our politicians will jump on that and saying that this is not for us and so on. So we have other issues as a country. So I don't know how we can bypass that kind of things. In fact, I hear that there are when I was young, there used to be double promotion for some kids, meaning who
Yes,
are
yes,
pretty good.
yes,
But these days they all have vanished, meaning of course,
yes,
nowadays school education is in real time, meaning
yes,
real standards, meaning it's
yes,
totally useless. More or most
yes,
of the time, it's useless. So,
correct. I agree.
yeah.
Yes. So sorry. I mean, maybe this is not right forum, but I just felt I had to express it because we have faced it with our child, and we took a very conscious decision to say we'll take the risk and take a path little less traveled and see where it goes, because we were just not happy with the system and the way the things were, and the child getting, like a square peg for a round hole situation.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Savita ji. Anyone else? All right. So there are, it seems that there are no more questions. I'll just ask a quick one, and this is more from a teaching perspective. As you said in the beginning, that combinatorics is something that is often taught in the 11th and 12th grade, and in my experience also, I've seen students either like or dislike. So combinatorics and geometry. So it's pretty polar views that people have about these topics. So, do you think one of the reasons why students feel that way, even about counting at least, is it because of the kind of problems that we introduce, or is it because we are introducing the topic pretty late and we could have leveraged on the topic if that is introduced a little earlier? And most of these students who are learning combinatorics, at a much earlier age, of course they are learning it from some teacher who's not from the normal teaching methodology. So I'm wondering, I mean, or maybe your thoughts on that, the way in which it is taught in 11th and 12th standard, is it that makes it very difficult for students to grasp? Is it the kind of problems, or is it that we are too late to introduce the topic? What do you think?
In fact, see, if you ask anyone, if you ask anyone why somebody likes a subject, okay, so they would always say that I had this wonderful teacher in my school. Okay, it's basically the teacher who really matters. And that's the first part. The second part is that how the subject is introduced. So here more often than not, the subject is introduced as if it is a bag of tricks. Okay, these are the formulas, and then when this comes, you use NPR. If this comes, you use NCR, and there ends the story. But that's not the case at all. So the way in which the subject is introduced in the school, that is the main villain in the whole piece. So if it is introduced in a different way, anybody can love math. In fact, that's what I told you. When I taught my daughter permutations and combinations as we are walking along a road, and then she picked it up pretty quickly. Okay, so the way in which you introduce it is very important, and that's really the problem. And again, the 11th and 12th standard, that's just one subject, and then they just drop the whole thing. There are so many brilliant applications of combinatorics in and graph theory, which they can really relate to. And then those things are not at all shown. If you don't show the beauty of a subject, how can you expect anybody to get interested in that or even willing to try their energy and time to learn that one? Right? If it is going to be mundane like this, and then what's the point? That's what the students will think. So the main culprit is the way it is taught, and then the main culprit is that the syllabus itself. So it has to be slightly different.
That's true, sir. There is one more thing which I would like to ask in continuation with this. Many a times I teach this topic to third year or fourth year engineering students. For the so-called campus placement exams and all that they have, like TCS and all. You know how those kind of exams are. And if the kind of problems that we introduce in the class initially to get them hooked on, if it is very interesting, they are interested. But as the problems get harder and harder, or not even harder, just one level up, then we see students dropping out and these things. So somewhere I have felt that it could be the kind of perseverance that they needed was not built at a younger age.
Very, yes.
And that is what they actually lack. Even probably because of that, they are not able to appreciate that particular subject. So no matter what good examples we take, if that quality is not there,
Yeah,
I think they'll still not be able to appreciate.
yeah. Yeah, in fact, this perseverance is very much lacking in these, what do they say, Y2K kids and so on. So, meaning this Y level kids or whatever they are called these days. And see, they think that everything has to come easy to them. And that's not a case at all. And talking about combinatorics, pigeonhole principle is such a simple concept. Anybody can understand. Okay. And the kind of problems it can solve are outstanding. Okay. So, how come the pigeonhole principle is not taught in the school? It just beats me. Meaning, why they should not teach combinatorics for 6th standard or 7th standard students? That's the best time to teach that. Okay, that they know how they can just learn how to count, and then they know how to count without counting. That's what it talks about. And then those things will be fascinating for them if you do it in the right spirit. But that's the unfortunate thing that it's not being done. So that's where the gap is. Of course, as you rightly put it, the perseverance is something we really have to build early on. And see, currently the kids have everything their way, right? See, previously we used to have many children in the house, and then they won't get anything they want, and then they can't have their way in everything. But nowadays, everything is they govern the house, right? They get everything they want, and then without even asking, right? So they have never met uh, a disappointment in their life. Okay, so then how will they persevere, right? So we should create an environment for them in which they will persevere.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. May I request Sindhu to share a few thoughts before we close the session?
I'm just amazed that the first 10 minutes of Sir's talk, he succinctly put the entire philosophy of epsilon. If I can just take the first 10 minutes and put it in our FAQ section, it'll just answer everything. You know, how he talked about the curriculum, how it is, it'll reach the children yet challenge them. And he talked about the purpose of this camp so beautifully. I think mathematicians and non-mathematicians in this group, everybody can understand that. He talked about how you have to, the purpose is to learn to live with the frustration when you're working with these problems, build resilience. And the camp is not meant to be easy, and the camp is not meant for all the homeworks to be completed and get 100%. Everything sir covered in the first 10 minutes. And I think the difference between, a regular instructor and a master is the philosophy that guides them. And you could see shades of that when sir was talking. I had a friend who once told me that she's learning music from a Padma Shri musician, and she said, I don't care what he teaches, he can teach me tennis, still go learn from him, because it's the philosophy and what he brings to those sessions. And you could see that when sir was talking, when he talked about the pursuits that you take on in life, whether it's math or anything, how that is hard, and that somehow uh, teaches you that life can be hard and that is all right, and that the goalposts cannot be exams. And I just loved that phrase he used, blossom into RMO. And you remove that word RMO and you put anything else, put music, art, or anything else, it still works. So I think our children are very blessed to have a master, and to be in a classroom with a master like him. So thank you, sir, for being here and answering all our questions so patiently. We really appreciate it. And it was wonderful listening to you. Thank you.
My pleasure, Sindhu. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Murali sir. Once again, thank you all parents for joining in. We'll meet for the next parent session. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Murali sir.